Welcome to the Ride With Us podcast, presented by the American Coaster Enthusiasts, the world's largest ride enthusiast organization dedicated to the appreciation, promotion, and preservation of roller coasters around the globe. So please keep your hands and feet inside the podcast at all times as we welcome in your host.
Hello, enthusiasts. It's your host, Jessica Gardner here. Rick Backstrup is a 40-year veteran of the theme park industry. President of R&R Creative Amusement Design, Inc., he is a theme park designer, art director, producer, project manager, and author of the book, Adventures of a Theme Park Designer. And today, he's a podcast interviewee. Correspondent and editor Bob Randolph sat down with Rick to talk Phantom Theater, Adventure Express at Bob's home park, Kings Island, and so much more. Enjoy.
Hello, I'm Bob Randolph. Today I'm jumping in to talk with a gentleman who is responsible for some of the most iconic things that you and I have seen at our favorite parks. His work spans from coast to coast. If you've been to Magic Mountain, Kennywood, Kings Island, you've seen some of what he's done on Viper, Exterminator, and Adventure Express, among others, and that's just a small portion of his work of over 30 years in this industry. I want to welcome in Rick Backstrup of R&R Creative Amusement Designs. Rick, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast with us today.
Thanks, Bob. I'm glad to be here.
It is such an honor to have you here because you've worked on some things that I know that I've been on, some of our listeners have been on. One of those is Adventure Express at Kings Island, and you worked on the Phantom Theater, and I know people at Kings Island love that. We're going to get to that in just a couple of moments, but if you would, tell me a little bit about you and some of your background, if you don't mind.
Well, we started the company, almost 40 years ago, actually, early 80s. And this was a guy that I met. I was running security at the Disneyland Hotel, but I always was a designer at heart, and ran into my business partner, Richard, and we began to work on some ideas together. And now this was the early 80s. So we built some models and did some concepts and so forth. And took it out to Knott's Berry Farm, to Magic Mountain, to Bradley and Kay, to some of the manufacturers and so forth, and started showing it to them. Before you know it, we were starting to do design work, and it exploded into a full-time company. So we've done over 40 water parks and a dozen dark rides and every kind of wax museum and thing you could think of. But along the way, we've also done many coasters, meaning various levels of thematic ideas and designs and so forth for those. We don't really design the coaster. That's for the guys, Vekoma and so forth, actually engineer the coasters. We're the guys who design the stations, pick the colors, do the queue lines, videos in the queue lines, put up the names and so forth, or the theming, depending on, say, like Adventure Express, the theming and that. So coasters have been a big part of what we do and what we still do.
Yeah, you've touched a lot of rides. I know that Viper at Magic Mountain is one of those. I've been on that. I've also been on Exterminator. And for those who haven't been on Exterminator at Kennywood, it's a wild mouse. But it's a lot of fun because it's got a really unique theme to it.
When we're working with Kennywood, we did a lot of work with them. We did Steel Phantom, and that was, we designed the station and the logo and colors and so forth, worked with them, and worked on the racer, completely rebuilt the front of the racer. But they came up with this idea of the wild mouse, but they wanted gigantic rats that were attacking Kennywood. That was original premise. So I wrote the story, and I do all the writing and creative work like that, and coming up with the characters and so forth, and wrote this crazy story about these huge rats that were running amok down in the sewer systems. And the park had hired Vermin Incorporated, which were the guys who were going to come in and stop this from happening. And the whole ride I called the Exterminator. I made up the name. I made up the name for most of these coasters along the road. But anyway, it had a extensive queue line with video, news reports, and so forth. But here's the funny thing about it: we worked with Sally Corporation, and who we've done many projects with, including Adventure Express, and they designed the Exterminator characters who were inside their Exterminator, being the Vermin Incorporated guys who were trying to exterminate the Exterminator. That's okay. So somewhere along the line, the park actually did away with the rats. We actually had gigantic animatronic rats that attacked you, along with the Exterminator characters in there. So anyway, that's just one of those things that most people don't know of, but people still love the ride and it's fun. But part of it never got built, which was the big rats. And one of them was a great scene at the top of the lift, that as it got to the top of the lift, all of a sudden the big rat tore the track up in front of you and lifted it up, and you swung to the left in the dark, and then went into the ride. So that was an effect we missed on that. It got lost along the road. It wasn't affordable. So
oh wow.
Anyway, that's kind of the story of the Exterminator. People still tell me they love the ride. It's a lot of fun. So
it is a lot of fun. That ride is very fun. I've been on it a couple of times when I've gone to Kennywood myself. So yeah, I've enjoyed it, and it's kind of neat to hear some of the backstory about how the ride got created and some of the theming that wasn't there, that, you know, something that I didn't see. Now, you have a book that's out, and stories like that, things that never got built, is just one of the chapters in the book that you have, and it is called Adventures of a Theme Park Designer. And where can I get that book? Because some of the contents alone, the table of contents, is something that fascinated me. And that's just one of the chapters, things that never got built.
It's available now in hardcover. Actually, it's a beautiful hardcover job that they did through Rivershore Press. That's Rivershore Press. And they can order it through that. They look up the website. They've got other books that they publish and so forth. It's going to be available down the line in other forms also. But right now, that's where you can get it. And the book itself has got 240 pictures in it. Mostly I took myself, or somebody took of me and Richard working on this stuff, and mostly black and white photographs. But anyway, there's about 240 pictures in there. So I wanted to make it real interesting, so it wasn't just a technical kind of a thing, but you could see all the things I was talking about.
So, yeah, a lot of the pictures that you're talking about in the book, you can see online at rivershorepress.com. That's where you can get the book from. You can kind of get a little preview of what's in there. And there's a lot of ground that gets covered. You've mentioned your partner a couple of times in the business, and he is the other R in this. Why don't you tell me a little bit about him as well, since he's a part of the team that makes all this happen?
His name is Richard Farron. He's a fantastic artist, and he has a degree in art. But the thing that is unusual for us is that most people in our business who own independent companies came up through WED, or came up through one of the big companies, or Universal Studios or something, and learned a trade and the craft by being involved with the big organizations. What Richard and I did is we just made it up ourselves. We didn't know what we were doing. I mean, other than we've been around amusement parks, and we've both been designers and musicians. I played in bands, guitar and trumpet and so forth, at Disneyland for years, and recorded with Capitol Records. And
oh, wow.
Richard's a musician and plays sax. And we actually have a band that we still play called the Nocturnes. It's Beach Boys and 60s and the Southern California stuff. So that's a part of our background, is that. And we just hit it off and started working on stuff. And there was just a synergy there that when we go and knock on the doors of Magic Mountain, they go, you know what, these guys, they haven't really done much, but you know what, they're enthusiastic. And we like the stuff they're doing. Before you know, we're building models for Knott's Berry Farm and Magic Mountain, and started doing design work on things like Bugs Bunny World and various rides, the Ninja, Magic Mountain. I mean, it all just kind of rolled on with us. And so, we've been business partners for all these years, and essentially 90% of what you see, we've done. We've got some great artists who help us out off and on. Some people who help us with characters and some of those kinds of things that I design. But 90% of what you see, we do it ourselves.
Oh, wow. That's amazing that you guys do so much of your own work. Now, it was interesting that you said that you play instruments and you guys still have a band. So what you're saying is if this whole amusement park thing doesn't work out, you can go get a recording contract then, right?
Either that or playing a nightclub someplace.
Well, at least you have something to fall back on. That's good. I mean, if
play once or twice every month and play a lot of Beach Boys and Eagles and some really fun kind of stuff. So that's kind of an aside. However, it helps a lot in design. Music is timing and surprises and things like that, and it really helps. We compose some of the music for the ride, say like Yosemite Sam and the Gold River Adventure, which is a dark ride, one we've done at Six Flags, and I helped compose all the music and played all the guitar parts for the soundtracks and so forth. So anyway, the music and that partnership has always been there too. And like I said, it helps us in the rhythm of design.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize that you'd played the music on that as well. That's fascinating. I mean, you guys are kind of full service then, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I've been told that is we're one-stop shopping because I do all the writing, let's say for cue lines and videos. We produce the videos like we did for Merlin's Mayhem. You probably know that one. And Dutch Wonderland, the coaster there, and it's got a whole story and so forth. And it's got videos that play with Merlin all the way through. And basically we created all of that, and I produced it and wrote it and did it. So we kind of are one-stop shopping from start to end. Basically taught ourselves how to do it. We're still learning.
All these years later, you're still learning. I love that. It's good to hear that kind of thing. So let's talk about some of the projects that you've worked on. One thing that I didn't know, I go to Las Vegas a lot just because I enjoy it there. And I enjoy the pool area at the MGM property at the MGM Grand. What I didn't know is that at one point in time, there was an amusement park that set on that ground, and you were involved in that, weren't you?
Yeah, we're deeply involved with it. That was the park was designed. I couldn't tell you how many acres now, maybe 10, 12 acres, and had some great rides in it. And we did the water rides for Dual Corporation. You probably know the name Dual. They designed all the original Six Flags Park and Marriott and so forth. And we used to do a lot of work for them. Ira West, who was the president, is a very good friend of mine. He's passed on, but we used to do a lot of work for them. And they got the contract to design the MGM Grand Adventures, is what it was called when the park opened. And we did the whitewater raft ride there, which was themed to the Old West and through tunnels and explosions and bank robberies, animatronics, and all kinds of stuff. And if you get a chance, you look at the MGM theme park. And we also did the Backlot River Tour, which was a riverboat ride that went through various scenes of movies being made. And at the very end, it went into a big pond area or a lake area. We had a 43-foot Bell Huey helicopter raised up, came up out of a pit next to the boat and was firing machine guns all around in the water.
Oh, man.
It was quite an effect. It's a fun park to look at if you have a chance on the internet to look at that. It only lasts about 10 years or so, and the Vegas changes all the time. And they wanted to put another convention center in some of the people. We were also working on Luxor and Circus at the time. It was wild times, but all of their stuff from Luxor and them, the thematic stuff is gone. It's gone.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I had no idea that you were involved in all of that in Vegas. I knew that you were involved with what used to be the theme park behind MGM Grand, but wow, I didn't realize Luxor and all that other stuff too. That's amazing to know. Now, one of the attractions, and I mentioned it earlier, a lot of people absolutely loved it. It's not there any longer at Kings Island, and that was Phantom Theater. Tell me a little bit about Phantom Theater.
Well, we were working on Adventure Express and opening Adventure Express, and I have a couple stories on that you might want to hear about with the coaster. But at that time, they asked us to take a look at. They wanted to put a dark ride in, and they kind of thought about a theater and weren't quite sure. So I came up with basically the Phantom Theater was originally the haunted theater, but what it was is I wanted to do a ride that was not ghosts. It has the same kind of conveyance system on it as Disney does, at the Haunted Mansion. Same continuous line drive system like that. But basically what it is there's all these characters from the vaudevillian days, the Maestro, the Great Garbanzo, Houdini, all these crazy characters, Hilda Bovine, the singer, and they're all these wacky kind of characters, and they refused to believe that the vaudevillian days were over, so they kept hanging around the theater, and as they got boarded up, they stayed there, and the longer they stayed there, the stranger the place came, and the stranger they became. Their skin turned kind of blue, and they became phantoms, but they were kind of like fun phantoms. Okay, wasn't meant to be a real scary thing, although there was a lot of surprises. But it lasted about 10 years, and then they wanted to put a ride-through shooting type game in it. But it's unbelievable how that has existed. And they invited me to go see the show, and I went and saw the show and met all the cast members, took pictures with them and so forth. And they were excited to meet me because I basically designed it,
right.
Characters and so forth. And we had a question and answer after that day, and there was maybe 100 people showed up in the theater to ask me questions. And I was just amazed at how people were enamored with those characters. They still sell pins there that you can put on for Maestro,
right?
And there's been a lot of talk about bringing the ride back. I mean, there's actually dozens of websites you can dial into. It's amazing. They all talk about bringing it back, and I've talked to Kings Island about it, and I've talked to Cedar Fair, and they've talked to me, but it's nothing that's going to happen immediately. It sure would be nice. There's a lot of people plugging for it. So of all the rides we've ever done, that's one of the longest lasting, even though it's been gone for, 20 years, I guess.
Yeah, it's been gone for a while, but a lot of people still love that ride. And when they opened it up at the theater, I know that there were a lot of people that were excited about that. And because I never rode the original ride, I was excited to go and see the theater production of it because I wanted to know what it was all about, and I really enjoyed it. Now, you also mentioned that you worked on Adventure Express, because I remember when that opened, and that was a big deal for having a coaster themed to that extent, because, we see the queue lines that are themed when we go to like the Beast at Kings Island. You kind of get that little theming as you're walking through the queue line. You see the signs and everything. But Adventure Express is a whole different animal altogether.
Yeah, they came to us on it, and they had chosen the coaster, and it was done by Arrow, and I think it was Arrow's last actual coaster that they built. It was a wooden frame with steel tracks, and Ron Toomer, president of Arrow, was a good friend of ours. We've been out at the IAPA shows and so forth. So anyway, they wanted to do this themed ride. So basically, I wrote the story of this runaway train that went down through in the jungle and went into caverns and volcanic tunnels. We had put a long tunnel in there and filled it with fog, and then put red and yellow lights in there. And it was just great effect when you roared through it. But at the very end, what was unusual is most coasters, they start and go up the lift and run through and come back to the station. On this one, it started in the station up on the hill. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to have people walk all the way down the hill to get on the coaster and then walk all the way up. We started it at the top, meaning there were two lifts in the ride. One lift had creaking timbers and blinking red lights and so forth. But the other one you went into is completely enclosed. And it's still there running now. and they've just recently done some refurbishment and added some other original things that we originally had there and added some new stuff. But anyway, at the end, there's a lift, and the lift goes up, and there's these huge drummers on each side. If you ever seen the picture, they're like 8 feet tall.
Right.
They start pounding, boom, 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 right? And as you go to the top, all of a sudden there's a big statue there, and he pours boiling lava onto you with steam and fog and lights and so forth, and the music is playing. But you come into the station, which is really kind of unusual. But I'll tell you a little story about opening Adventure Express. We've been working on it, and we're always on site, art directing and figuring things out and working with the manufacturers and that. But Sally Corporation, incredible animatronics people who do a lot of work for us, had built those gigantic drummers, and they were working like crazy to get them working correctly or finishing the installation. And that's a really hard thing to do, is to do an installation of any theming when you've got a coaster, because they want to be testing the coaster constantly. Right. And obviously you can't be climbing over the tracks when the coaster comes through. So anyway, they were working on it. So we were there for the opening day, and they brought us up front and said, here's Rick and Richard and R&R Designs, and these are the guys who did all the theming, and they're going to ride in the front of the first car, and behind them is going to be the president of Kings Island and all the press people and so forth. Well, here's the thing. We'd never seen it work. We'd never it and seen it work. We'd seen it work, but we'd never seen it work from the car. So we didn't know if it was going to work. So anyway, it took off. Now we're going down, and we go into the steam tunnel. Everything looks beautiful. We go into the first lift and the creaking timbers, and we had an explorer that was impaled by a spear and all that. So it's headed towards the last. And I'm going, this has got to work, right? So we hit the bottom, and it starts going up, and all of a sudden the music comes up, and the big drummers, all their arms, there's 8 of them. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so I'm happy. Everybody gets off the train and goes, that was great. We loved it, and the drummers were incredible. Well, in a little bit, the people from Sally came out, and they said, how did it look? And I said, hey, it looked great. They said, you know what? They said it wasn't working. So what we did is we got people from the park, and we got all of our guys, and we had sticks behind the arms. And as you guys went up on the first thing, we got behind, and we all did the drumming by hand. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, man, that's amazing.
So that was good old Sally came through for us. And pretty soon it was all up and running, but that was an opening day. So there's a lot of crazy things that happen that the public doesn't know.
Yeah, I had never heard that. That's crazy that they went through all of that to make it work, but that's awesome that they made it work for you, so that way you could see what it eventually was going to look like. And I've been on the ride, so I know exactly what you're talking about with all those tunnels and everything. Yeah, it's a great ride to go on. It's a lot of fun. It really is. So you've done a lot of projects. And you were talking about some of the creative process and how you write the backstories, or you started to say that you wrote the backstories. Let's talk a little bit about that creation process, because I've always been curious about that. How does that really start? Is it just like a seed of an idea that a park comes to you with, or do they say, here's what we'd like for you to do, and come up with your own idea? How does that process start? It can be different for each project. Sometimes they'll come up and say, we've got an idea, a basic theme. It was like the Phantom Theater. They kind of had a theme of a theater, but I took it from there and basically created all the characters and designed the themes and so forth. So it comes in at different levels. When we did Yosemite Sam, we had all the characters, but they had no story. So I wrote a story about Bugs Bunny being a deputy, and Yosemite Sam had stolen the gold, and Bugs Bunny deputizes Daffy Duck and Tweety. Speedy Gonzales. I'm sorry. I got my top here. And chases them through the unpainted desert, and captures them, throws them in jail at the end. But after a big shootout and so forth. So basically, I had the characters. We knew what their personalities already were, and I wrote the story for the ride, and they loved it because it was the Texas Rangers and it was in Texas, so it was perfect for them. So it comes in at different levels, and usually the creative
side has to take over from that. And I envision the stories. That's my way. I see it in my head as I'm writing it and putting it together. And we're putting together the initial storyboards and into the plans and so forth. And again, Rick and I work as a team. He's taken a lot of my stories and scenes and so forth and turn it into artwork that is what we call a storyboard. So different people create different ways. With me, like I said, I could see it all in my head, scene by scene, as I write it down.
And the storyboards are the actual scenes themselves as they go from point A to point B to point C, correct?
Right, scene by scene. We call it a storyboard, and that's kind of standard stuff. Goes way back to Disney and the way they created rides and so forth. And after the storyboards, basically, that's something you're going to be presenting to the clients, to the people who are hired you to do the work. And once that's all approved, we go from there into full scale plans. I mean, mostly what we do and still done is hand drawn these plans. We do some CAD and that, and a lot of people use a lot of CAD now, computer aided design, but we still do it the way we've always done it. It works for us.
If it's not broken, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of projects over the years. Which one would you say is the most creative that you've done?
Well, let's say, yeah, that's a hard question. I would say the most creative. I mean, essentially all the stuff we've done from the ground up. Like I said, sometimes the characters like Bugs Bunny, we know who he is, but sometimes there's nothing at all. Like say Phantom Theater, just for example, is, okay, what is it? It's called the Haunted or Phantom Theater. Well, I come up with the story of those characters and then name them and give them each a backstory, and then we create the look of it. So I would have to say everything is creative on one level or another. It's hard to pick what would be creative. I can tell you what some of my favorite ones are, like the Grand Canyon Rapids and Yosemite Sam, Phantom Theater, some of those really classic ones. And we do a lot of water park stuff too. We've created dark rides for water parks, like the Highland Hills Water World is Voyage to the Center of the Earth, which is a half-mile long dark ride in a tube down into dinosaur caverns and meet a T-Rex and so forth. So that was real creative. We won a lot of awards for that ride along the road. So that would be a real creative one. It's real different.
Yeah, talk to a little bit about some of the awards that you guys have won, because you've done, again, a lot of things over the years, and you've been recognized for a lot of that work. Matter of fact, you were the first one to receive an award, and I'm trying to remember the exact name of it.
Probably talking about Crooked Creek Washout. That's one of our first really major projects, and it was a water slide in Houston. And this is before water parks. I mean, we were working on the original water parks like Raging Waters and things, but this was even before that. And it was a 3-slide complex. But if you look on the website or something, it's pretty incredible as far as there were buildings and caves and dynamite explosions and fog tunnels and a big blade that was going to cut you in the sawmill that you dip down below and so forth. So that was called the Crooked Creek Washout. And anyway, we got invited to go to what was called at that time the United States Water Slide Association. And so we were awarded the first innovation award for that project. And that soon after a while turned into the World Water Park Association. And we won 2 other awards from them for the dinosaur ride, Voyage to the Center of the Earth, and also Lost River, the Pharaohs, which is a dark ride there up at Highland Hills. It's outside of Denver. So we've won that award 3 times through the World Water Park Association for our themed rides. These things are really extravagant. I mean, you go down into a pyramid and there's grave robbers and talking statues and a volcanic eruption and a mummy and treasure and cobras. And this is a water park, and it's still going today. We still do work for them. But nobody told us we couldn't do that. We just did. Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time, and it turned out to be, because they're still cooking. So those water rides are really unique and unusual. And that's some of the awards that we've won along the road. And
you've worked on one of the water parks that I've been to, Sandcastle.
Yeah, we did Sandcastle. We did all the thematic stuff. Basically, water parks, what we'd be doing is we go in and I pick out all the names for everything, and we pick out the colors of the slides and do all the buildings and the graphic signage and decoration and theming and so forth. So that one was really it was kind of more of a boardwalk kind of a theme, Atlantic City boardwalk kind of a look. Although some of the buildings have kind of a Western look to it, but yeah, that still goes today. They've repainted it and changed it around a little bit, but it's essentially still our buildings and thematic application to it.
Looked good last time I was there, I can tell you that much. They certainly enjoyed being at that park. A lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, the design process, some of the places that you've worked on, this is all a part of your book, correct?
The book starts with how we met and how we started working on stuff together. And we started knocking on doors, and we went up to Hollywood and talked to some movie companies. We were working on some movies. We did a movie called The Osterman Weekend, which was a kind of a spy thing with Sam Peckinpah. And so here we are on site. We've never been on a movie site before, and we're doing special effects for Sam Peckinpah, along with another company who was contracted to do it. They brought us in, and then we'd go back at in the morning, and we'd work on the Camp Snoopy model and working on Camp Snoopy.
Oh man,
up in blowing up a Winnebago and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. It was like a spy thriller. So anyway, it starts as we were doing all this, and takes us to our first project's chronological order through the water slides, and as the projects got bigger and larger, and as we went through. So that's the book. There's about 25 different projects, starting from the start to more recent, and there's also sections about designing tips and so forth about how you put the project together, and then there's also a section about things that were never built, which were projects that we designed, and for one reason or another, budgetary or something, it got stopped along the way. And then also about water parks, about wild rivers and Hurricane Harbor, and all these things that we worked on over the years. So yeah, that's the book. And I just got back from the IAPA show, and I had a lot of feedback from people who had bought it and really enjoyed it. So it made me happy. I kind of hit the road that I wanted to on it, as I wanted to make it real entertaining and a lot of backstage stories without a lot of technical type stuff. So you don't have to be in the amusement business per se to enjoy the book. It's an adventure story, essentially, as to how we developed and continue to do the stuff today. It's a big adventure. Every project's a different adventure. That's what makes it fun.
And that's why the book is named what it is, Adventures of a Theme Park Designer. Lots of great stuff. Thank you for joining in today. Certainly appreciate you being here. Rick Backstrup, again, he has a book out. It's called Adventures of a Theme Park Designer. You can get it on rivershorepress.com, and again, the table of contents alone is enough to get you sucked in. So really appreciate you being here today. Good luck with all of your projects in the future, and look forward to seeing more from you.
Well, I'll tell you, just as an aside here at the end, I'll tell you what I'm working on right now, and that is the National Coaster Museum in Plainview, Texas.
Oh, yeah,
you're probably acquainted with that, and
absolutely.
That's what I'm doing a lot of work on right now, kind of distilling. It's amazing. I'm studying some of the cars they have there and so forth. So I'm sure your listeners are going to be interested in that. But that's that. And as a final tag here is that through the book, I also tell about how I've met so many people who were inspired or had a good time or enjoyed something as a kid on one of these projects. So that was a lot of fun to bring that to bear and understand that the kind of stuff we and other people do in this business, what it means to people, and how much they enjoy it. So anyway, hopefully we'll get you some stuff down the road on the Coaster Museum.
Hopefully, we'd love to see more of your stuff down there, because we're all looking forward to the day that we can go down and visit and see everything that they have down there. They've got a lot to work with.
Yeah, believe me, I know. I'm studying it now.
Rick Backstrup, again, thank you for joining the podcast today. Certainly appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much to Rick Backstrup for coming on the podcast and sharing his experience. 40 years in the theme park industry is so impressive. If you want to hear more about Rick's career, check out his book, Adventures of a Theme Park Designer. And don't forget that Ace is everywhere you consume your social media. Facebook, X, Threads, Pinterest, LinkedIn. Make sure you're subscribed to Ace's pages on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Discord. Follow us everywhere to stay on top of all the coaster and park news and to hear what your ACE membership has to offer. If you haven't already, we would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast. Give us 5 stars, rate and review if you can. Thank you for listening. Hope you get to ride a coaster today.
Ride With Us is produced by the American Coaster Enthusiasts, a registered 501c3 organization. Visit ridewithace.com for additional information, and we will see you at the parks.